every supplier in your supply chain is doing one of two things right now. They're either actively growing your company or they're undermining it by being a liability. There are only two things: asset suppliers and liability suppliers. Here's what I see every day as a procurement consultant. People are just underestimating how powerful their supply chain is and how it can directly impact their own customer. A fundamental shift that I'm thinking about is, if you think about your own business for a second, you have some clients that are providing value, they're giving you testimonials, they are flexible, they want you to succeed, and they're spreading the word when you're doing things right. And then there are other clients, the ones that are constantly complaining, the ones that are late with their payments, and I could go on for years. Well, the same thing actually amplified occurs in your supply chain. There's one supplier who is constantly increasing their prices, even though they were just awarded with a contract 60 days ago. Did they buy the business? Well, now the other strategic topic that you wanted to work on is becoming very urgent over the next couple of months, because right now you have to focus on something else, which is solving that problem with this supplier who did not quote right and is now coming back with a price increase after the fact. Then there are other suppliers who always complain about some variations in the scope of work. Everything feels heavy. Once you come back to them and say, hey, we're in peak season, we might need a little bit more volume, they want to charge you more immediately without finding and wanting to find a constructive solution. It is just draining your energy. And then there are other suppliers, the ones that come to you with innovations. They found a new way about tracking their shipments. They want to help you become successful, so they know from last year's experience that during peak season you need support. And maybe that was not included in the contract, but they proactively come to you months before to figure something out that feels right to both of you. It's a whole different approach. Then what I just said is another example. A supplier, we had that during COVID a lot of times, where a supplier would just go out, sign a contract, and then they would not be able to supply the contract because they were doing something on the spot market that was just way more lucrative during that short amount of time. And that's a long-term problem, not only for the supplier, but it's a really, really big problem also for you in procurement, because you made a commitment to that supplier and you have now a problem that is taking you away from all of the other strategic initiatives that you could be working on. You're firefighting. Let's be honest about that. And these problems just compound over time. So if that happens, I think you need to figure out what are asset suppliers and what are your liability suppliers. When do we actually do that audit? I think there are many companies who never do that audit. You could do that by doing quarterly business reviews. Are they fulfilling their KPIs? But I think it goes way deeper than that. Is there a client CEO, I like to call it, somebody from the company, from your supplier, that is dedicated to you, providing you with the bad news in advance so that you can work on something? Are they constantly communicating what's going on and how we can do things better? Are they bringing innovations to you? Are they flexible? And so on. And if you know that, and I think it's very nuanced, but people can feel that, then that is usually an asset supplier. It is somebody where you invest $1 and $1.50 come out over some time. Whereas with a liability supplier, you invest $1 and you're either staying there all the time because there's no capacity to grow. And let's be honest, we all want to grow. or they're even dragging you down. And that is a very, very big problem for you because this is compounding. Here's one example. I think that's a very practical one. If you have somebody who supplies your cars to a dealership, and that supplier during peak season is constantly complaining, increasing their prices, and they don't have any capacity, who is bearing the brunt of that initial punch to your gut? Not you, right? Because you might be still selling some cars, but there's the end customer who is receiving their cars maybe 2 or 3 days later. They might be receiving their spare parts 2 or 3 days later. They're not getting the information that they need on when things are going to be at the dealership, so it means that they might have a useless trip to the dealership thinking that they can pick up their car, but in the end the car has been delayed. And then after some time, because your supplier increased your prices, you want to keep your margin. So what are you doing? You have options finding other suppliers, which I think is always the first one, right? But then also if you can't find anybody else, then your customer might have to pay more for their car in the end. And that is something that nobody wants. So I think these supplier asset audits, as I call them, are something very, very strategic that you can do in your company, and I can actually help you with that. We have a score sheet where we score our suppliers based on, are they an asset or are they a liability to us? And then we take specific measures how we can improve your supply chain and make you more successful in the long run, getting you a huge competitive advantage and making you your customer's favorite. If you're interested in doing that, go to www.21consulting.xyz, apply for a free consultation, and let's talk through your supplier asset audit. I'll talk to you soon.